Hey, welcome back to the Quiet Connections podcast. I'm Stacey, and today we have one heck of an episode for you. You're going to love it. I'm joined by business coach and community leader Katrina Widener, who has a wealth of wisdom to share with you. Let me ask you, do you currently believe that extroversion is equal to confidence? Do you think that confidence is something others just have and you don't? Do you fear trying something new in case it isn't perfect or it goes wrong or it might not come to fruition? Well, get comfy because me and Katrina bust some of those introversion, extroversion, confidence myths, how to fail greatly, and explore how failure and confidence are skills that we can all learn. This chat really resonated with me. I know it will for you also, so let's go. Hi, Katrina. It's so nice to welcome you onto the Quiet Connections podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. So I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you today. Obviously, I describe myself as being an introvert. I know you describe yourself as being an extrovert. I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of what we might explore around this topic and maybe bust some myths. I know that there are lots of misconceptions and preconceived ideas around introversion and extroversion, and it'd be really interesting, I think, for me particularly, also just to hear like your views on kind of that dynamic from an extrovert's perception and position, and yeah, just see kind of what we discover and explore today. But first of all, would you like to just share with our listeners a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
Definitely. So I am, again, my name's Katrina. I'm based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So a little far away from you.
Yeah.
um, I am a business coach. So what I primarily do is I help entrepreneurs feel really excited and feel a lot of ease and flow within their businesses. So it's more than just this idea of like marketing or sales tactics or social media, all of those things I know about and can teach on, but it's also really focusing on feeling lit up by the work that you're doing and feeling really confident in how you're doing it. And for me, that ties a lot with alignment. So personal alignment, professional alignment, which I know can kind of be one of those no words. But if you know me, you know I talk about it all of the time. And it's really where a lot of my passions lie. Otherwise, I'm a super people person, huge community advocate. I co-lead an entrepreneur community, well, the chapter that's here locally. I also have founded a community beforehand and will like attend 8,000 networking events. So I'm happy to be talking about this topic today.
Amazing. I would actually like to explore a little bit later on, a little bit about maybe different approaches that maybe introverts could take, just because, you know, obviously our community and our listeners are primarily introverted. There's a lot of social anxiety, but also a lot of them have a lot of really great ideas for businesses, and but can sometimes feel a little bit scared to take that entrepreneurial route. So it would be great to pick your brains a little bit on that a little bit later, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a lot of fun. And I totally understand where everyone's coming from. So we can definitely touch on that.
Amazing. So just to like offer a little bit of background, so I know we had a little bit of a chat beforehand, and you mentioned that previously you've had some past experiences there of not feeling quite so confident in yourself as well. Could you share a little bit about that with us?
Definitely. I think one of the things that we talked about that I know I really want to touch on is the idea that just because you are an extrovert doesn't mean you don't have social anxiety. It doesn't mean that you're like completely confident all of the time. It just really means that you fill your cup by being around other people. So like if you think about introverts probably fill their cup by spending some time alone, maybe reading, maybe resting, going for a walk alone, right? Like for me, it's much more fulfilling to go for a walk with a friend than it is to go for a walk alone. And that's really like the biggest difference that I want to like immediately put out there, because
Yeah.
you can oftentimes have these ideas that just because you're extroverted means that you're confident all the time, which definitely isn't true. Like I said, I go to networking events all the time. And if I go to one alone and I don't see anyone I know, I'm uncomfortable. Like it's not just like I walk in and I'm immediately like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And don't get me wrong, I will then be able to walk up to a random group of people and be like, hi, my name's Katrina. I don't think I've met you beforehand. So that I kind of no longer feel uncomfortable. But I think that like that's the biggest difference. And the thing is that even though I am willing to do that, even though I'm willing to like walk up to a bunch of strangers and introduce myself, that doesn't mean I'm like excited about it. It's not like I'm like, oh, great, I get to go meet new people and I have put myself out there, right? I still get that feeling like, oh, I have to do this. Okay, it's going to be fine. Just steel yourself, Katrina, and go over and introduce yourself. Like, I wouldn't describe myself as someone with a social anxiety, but that doesn't mean that I don't get uncomfortable or anxious in situations when I am out in public and I don't know anyone and I'm at an event, or I'm like spending time with friends. For instance, this is another big situation I feel like people might find themselves in. It's like, 1 to 2 friends and everyone else at the party is a stranger, right?
Yeah.
Like I put a premium on going around and introducing myself and like trying to ingratiate myself into conversations, but that doesn't mean that it's comfortable or natural for even me, even though I've literally been able to do this with people since I was like 5 years old. It's just something, it's a skill that you have to learn. It's something you have to practice doing. And just the same way that everything else is uncomfortable the first couple of times that you do it, maybe it stays uncomfortable. But once you learn that, hey, the act of going up and introducing myself is going to be awkward, but very rarely are people going to be like, no, please leave us alone. I don't think that has literally ever happened to me. And that also means that then I'm the person at the party who sees someone enter alone, who sees someone feeling maybe awkward or uncomfortable, and goes over and introduces myself to them and says, do you want to hang out with us? Do you want to sit at our table? Do you want to like come join this conversation? Because I also know what it feels like to have been in that situation.
So first of all, I love the fact that you've just completely dove straight in and busted that myth that all extroverts are really confident, because I know from like my perspective and from someone who's been quite shy throughout my life that I had this idea that anyone who was able to just go up to someone and speak to them must never feel anxious or never have any doubts about who they are, or all of those kind of things. And I know, again, a lot of people in our community kind of still have that idea as well. And yet that's not, going up to people and being able to speak or wanting to spend a lot of time around people isn't the definition of confidence, which was a huge thing for me to learn.
Definitely. It's one of those things too, where it's like, we view everything else as like a skill, but we don't view a lot of emotional things as a skill. Or maybe even like a choice is a better way to talk about it. Like I can go up and do it confidently now because I know that I've done it so many times beforehand and it's turned out fine. And because I am the type of person at a party who wants to go talk to the other people. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll go pet the cat or dog as well in the corner, but then I'll go talk to like literally every other person at the party. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't, like, I don't get uncomfortable when I'm in situations where I know no one, or I don't get uncomfortable when I have to like force myself to go introduce myself to people. But one of the things I talk about in my coaching business with my clients is literally whatever feeling we want to feel is a choice. So like, if we want to feel happy, that's a choice we have to make every single day. If we want to feel at peace, that's a choice you have to make in the moment. If we want to feel successful, that's a choice that we have to make. And the same thing goes with feeling confident. And it's not just like sitting there being like, okay, I want to feel confident. Boom. Now I'm magically confident. It's knowing what actions can I take that will either alleviate the anxiety that I have or bring in the feeling that I'm trying to achieve. So it's like, maybe, hey, when I go and I do this one thing, I feel confident. For me, it might be like when I go and I have my coaching calls with my clients, I know that I'm really good at what I do and I can walk away feeling confident. Or I know that if I join a networking group and I like have conversations with those people, I'm going to leave feeling confident. So I'm going to fill my schedule with more things that leave me feeling confident. And viewing it as something that's proactive as opposed to reactive. Oftentimes we think of confidence as something that happens to us externally, or joy is something that like, well, when I get this level of confidence, even, or when I get to this financial level, or when I look like this, or when my house is like that, then I'll be happy. And it's instead saying like, no, I can choose to feel however I want to in the moment by knowing what things bring me this emotion or bring me this feeling.
Yeah, I love that so much. And for you, like, well, I mean, that's very similar to the approach that I've had to take over the last few years as well. There's like really getting to grips with, okay, what are the things that I can do that do help me to feel more confident in myself? And what are the things that don't? And either let go of those things or transform them. So for you personally, like I'm just curious to know like how you kind of got into this work and what your journey has been.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I have always been someone that's very interested in people. And I know that I'm an extrovert, yes, but this even is like one step further where I nerd out about the reason why people do things or what their thought processes are or how something might affect how they make a decision in the future. Like when I listen to podcasts, those are the type of podcasts I'm listening to. When I'm reading like nonfiction books, I'm often reading about like, this is how the mind works, or this is how like our psyche works, because I just nerd out about all of that kind of stuff. And that has always been true. I'm also an avid reader anyway. So just like both fiction and nonfiction. So setting myself in the mindset of another person has always been something I've been really drawn to and really enjoyed. So when it got to the point where I was in the 9 to 5 world and I knew that it wasn't for me, I had started out at a humongous corporation, like a mega corporation. I switched to freelancing full time, but still working with bigger corporations, but freelancing for them. And then I switched to working for a very small company, very intimate setting. And all three of them, I was like, this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't it. I realized that the common denominator was working with these big companies, not having the freedom or the agency to really make my own decisions and my choices. I was always beholden to someone else and their needs and their expectations. And as we all know, sometimes managers are not trained to be leaders. They're just given the promotion to be a manager. And that isn't a situation where I thrive. I thrive having some agency over what I'm doing and being able to, as I've already mentioned, really align myself with the work I'm doing and make sure that it's aligned with who I am and what my personal values are and how I operate best and all of that kind of stuff. So when I started my own business, I really started out actually first as a life coach. One of my old friends had given me the compliment that was like, you innately know how to make someone feel welcome and taken care of, like right from the get-go. And I was like, you know what? That means a lot to me. How do I make a career off of that?
I love that.
Well, and it was just like, that's what felt good, right? Like, that's like the compliment that's stuck in my brain forever. Why wouldn't I try to move in that direction? And so since then, I've been taking some training. I've been doing a lot more education and learning. I've been in business for 4 years now. So a lot more education and learning and training. Ongoing education, guys, is like the trick to everything in my book.
Absolutely agree with that.
But my background previously in all my 9 to 5 work and my freelancing work was a marketing specialist, social media manager, search engine optimization, like all of this good, juicy stuff that could be worked and transformed to entrepreneurs. And I knew as an entrepreneur how lonely it is, how hard it is to do it on your own, how much you don't know. So every single person I was working with, I just ended up also talking about these things with, which is when I eventually made the shift to business coach. So it's kind of been an interesting journey, but all in all, it really just ties back to I really enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy learning about them and helping them figure out how to really tune into themselves and how they naturally operate instead of putting shoulds on themselves or listening to outside expectations or looking at other people and being like, I should be like them, or I should be more like them. And instead saying, no, this is how I naturally operate. And that's how I'm supposed to operate. And it gets so much easier from there.
I love that so much. And what I just really want to draw attention to for any of our listeners right now is that everything that Katrina has just shared is exactly like the same type of stuff that we're trying to like promote here at QC as well, which really just comes down to the fact that regardless of whether you're introverted or extroverted, we all need the same things.
Oh,
And
definitely.
and this is all about, you know, all these fundamental like just human things of you're getting to know what your values are, bringing yourself into alignment. And the second that you start working towards those things is when life starts to feel a bit easier and a lot of the anxieties disappear. So I love what you said there about, you know, letting go of like the who I should be and what's expected of me, and instead actually being true to who we are instead.
Yeah, it's definitely probably the most important work I do in my business. I mean, love talking some good SEO with someone, but when we're talking about like, these are the expectations I put on myself, and these are the ways that I'm not honoring who I naturally am. What we talk about a lot, and in some of the training that I've taken, one of my mentors was like, we're all designed for the life that we want to have. So if you wanted to have that life of that extrovert, you would have been an extrovert, really. And understanding that like, hey, what we actually want in life are the things that we're already set up to achieve. So we need to let go of the shoulds. Otherwise we'll never like get the things that we want in life.
Oh, I love, yeah, I just love everything that you're saying right now. Because, yeah, that just feels so true, though. Like the things that you are most drawn to, the things that you're naturally curious about, and the things that excite you are really the things that you should be walking more towards and really diving into. So, what tips do you have for someone who perhaps is maybe standing on the edge of that right now and is like, well, I feel like I kind of know what I want to do or what I'm maybe naturally good at, but I just feel far too afraid to take that step? Like, what tips do you have for that person?
I would say that there are two big ones. The first one is really dive into some self exploration. I know like I offer a workbook. When I was first starting, I like purchased like You Are a Badass, like all of these self-help books, more so because I just wanted to explore who I am and explore the things that I am capable of achieving, right? Like we live our lives putting ourselves in boxes all of the time. And when we kind of open the door and imagine bigger than our box, it's terrifying because we have no idea how it feels to live that life. We know how it feels to live our lives right now. And our subconscious brain is basically like, like if you switch up your life, you could like maybe die. Like they like literally see it as that terrifying. So our subconscious brains are like, so like, what if we just like don't? What if we just stay here and continue doing what we want? And our conscious brain is like, no, I really want to go do this thing. That looks like fun. This sounds so much better than what I'm doing right now. And our subconscious brain is basically like, but how about not? And getting curious about yourself, and whether that's even just like starting a journaling practice, or I even recommend doing like meditation. You never know what's going to come up in those spaces, but really like looking at some books, looking at some journals, looking at some workbooks that force you to kind of think about your life in a different way. I know one of the questions in my workbook that might be a good thing that someone could journal about is, what are the moments in my life that I enjoy who I am when I'm doing them? And what are the moments in my life when I don't? So it's like, okay, for me personally, when I am at a networking event and I'm making connections with people and giving them recommendations or helping answer their questions, I love who I am in that environment. Like that's where I thrive. That's where I'm meant to be. When I am like sitting at home feeling angry and maybe snapping at my like family members, I don't really love who I am in that moment. I'm not like proud of that version of Katrina. And so asking myself, what are the moments that I really love who I am and what are the moments who I don't? And I like also want to put the caveat out there. Like, I don't exactly love who I am when I'm a vegetable sitting on the couch watching television. Does that mean I'm never going to watch television? Obviously not. But that means that like when I'm feeling low, is television going to be the thing I turn to? Also not.
Yeah.
So that's the first tip, is this idea of like getting curious and really diving into who you are and exploring who you naturally are and what is a should and what is you. The second thing, and it feels like kind of self-serving to say this, which is not my intention whatsoever. It just genuinely is like a big tip for me, is get outside help. Whether that's listening to like a podcast, right? Hiring a coach or a mentor. When I first started my business, I knew that I wanted to make a shift. I knew I wanted to make a change. I didn't know how to do it. And the how was what felt so big and so overwhelming and intimidating. And I hired a coach at that point in time. That's who I did all my training with. That's how I learned how to like be a business owner, was from somebody else who did it. And I can say from my own personal experience that what we did in the span of 3.5 months would have taken me a year to do by myself. Like, we just dove in, got everything set up. She was able to like lead me through, what does coaching actually look like? What does a meeting look like? How do I sit down and do this? Like, get me started right off the bat. And also all of the business stuff, how to set up an LLC, what contracts do I need? What do I do about taxes, right? All of the bigger things that like, everyone's just like, what, wait, how, It was so much more helpful to do it with someone else. And that could also just be like a networking community. It doesn't necessarily have to mean hiring someone. It could be reaching out and asking someone for a coffee chat. It could be asking someone if they want to be your accountability partner and you can pick each other's brains on things. Like, there are so many different ways to go out and do this. And especially for someone who, like for me, is extroverted, I'm like, yeah, give me all the people all the time. For someone who's introverted, it might be more beneficial to be like, I want that one person, please. Like one mentor or one coach or one like friend that I know that will hold me accountable. So figure out what works well for you, but like really getting curious and then also getting some outside help are going to be the two things that are going to be the most powerful.
I completely agree with you. And it's, again, exactly the steps that like I've had to take myself as well. Yeah. And even like the getting curious about yourself, that for me came so much easier when I had a coach and somebody else to work with on that as well, just to reflect things back to you and to, ask those important questions that perhaps you wouldn't ask yourself. So
Definitely.
but also get business support. Like if anyone listening is wanting to maybe step more towards like self-employment or, starting up your own business, then yeah, absolutely seek out other entrepreneurs and other people who are perhaps doing things that you are and who are steps further ahead, and seek out their advice and their guidance and their support. It's absolutely incredible to have that around you, and it's so much easier than trying to figure it out all by yourself, which I think is what so many of us try to do, regardless of whether that's getting to know ourselves or taking up new hobbies or setting up businesses, is that we all try to do it alone and independently, and that's, I think, where we can trip ourselves up a little bit.
Definitely. Like, even right, I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It snows most of the year here. And I like, even a great example, this year I took snowboarding lessons and I paid for someone else to teach me how to snowboard. I snowboarded in high school, but that was like a long time ago. And I had never gotten formal training. And so I was like, you know what, if this is something I want to get back into, if this is something that I think would be enjoyable for me to do in the winter, right? Get out. Also, it was one of the few things here that we could do during COVID and still be outside in the like bitter cold winter months. I was like, I'm going to decide to work with someone else and have them lead me through it, as opposed to just like getting a ski pass and trying to do it by myself all over again. And the thing that was very interesting is that I was in an adult class, right? Everyone in there were grown humans. And grown humans very rarely try something like that from scratch at this age. It's normally something that we try something that we've never done beforehand, have no idea how to do when we're younger. And I luckily had previous experience, but the other members of the class did not. And listening to them talk about it and kind of working with them, and even myself, like getting a lot more tips, like it was kind of this question of when was the last time I really started something on my own? Like, and knowing it was going to be hard and knowing I was going to fail the first like 50 times I did it, right? Like, how many times do you fall when you have 2 feet strapped to one board and have never done it beforehand?
Yeah.
And it was really this kind of shift and of our like mentalities, even as a group, of just like, okay, like we can all support each other through this. I mean, there were only like 5 of us, but we can support each other through this. We can kind of keep working and see what we can learn, and really know that it's okay to start something from scratch, even as an adult, and fail the first 50 times. If I look at my 1.5-year-old niece, like, and when she first started walking, when she first started standing, how many times did she fail? Like 3 million. But she never ever stopped trying.
Yeah.
And we've lost that as adults. We have lost that feeling and that ability to say, like, okay, I can try something and not do it perfectly the first time, and not do it perfectly the first 5 times, and still keep trying at it and still keep going. And so also, like, remembering that just because it's hard doesn't mean it's worthwhile, and relearning that skill of failure instead of viewing it as a negative thing. Because regardless of if it's like a hobby, or like you're saying, getting curious about ourselves, or like starting a business, or going up at a networking event and trying to talk to someone new, like we're so used to sticking to what's comfortable and familiar, and that we've already learned, that we forgot that failure is not a negative thing. It's just how we learn. Like, and do we really want to stop learning for the rest of our lives because we're afraid that like maybe we aren't going to get it perfectly at the first, like at the get-go? No. When we think about it logically and rationally, and we take the emotion out of it, it's really just like saying, like, well, as a baby, I tried to stand for like 300 times before I could actually stand. How is this any different?
Yeah. What I loved most about what you just said there was that failure is a skill. Like we can learn how to fail greatly.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
amazing. And I just know that, like, for me personally, the whole thing around failing and just this idea of like being too afraid to try something new because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it perfectly or do it well the first time really got in the way for me of actually doing a lot of things that I know would have brought me joy. And for me, that was like one of my main like sources of anxiety, was that, you know, I'm going to reach the end of my life. I'm not going to have done all the things that would have been fulfilling for me. And yet the thing standing in the way of me being able to do that was that hurdle of potentially failing and not being perfect. And like, what a huge thing that we put in front of ourselves.
We always think too about like, oh, the other people are going to judge me. If someone else sees I'm going to do this, I'm like, no one's paying attention to you. Also, like, think about the last time that you were with somebody else and they didn't do something perfectly, right? You probably didn't judge them. Like, you're with a friend and I don't know, they went out on a date and they never talked to that person again. You don't like think like, oh, there's something wrong with you. It's like, no, you're like, oh, that person's rude for ghosting you. Like it's not something that actually happens the way that we think about it in our brains. Our brains like to tell us stories. Our brains like to like basically think of your brain as a computer where it's just inputting and outputting numbers. And your brain is like 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 1 = 2, except that your brain isn't a computer and it isn't a calculator. And it's basically saying, like, as a child, I saw at school, this kid fell and one person laughed. So now I can never do anything. Otherwise, everyone's going to laugh at me. And that even is more like likely than most of the stories our brains make up. Like if you think about even the classic, like I texted my friend and they didn't respond to me, they must be mad at me. Like that's our brain like putting two and two together and saying 1 + 1 = 2, when really it's like, no, actually your friend's phone died, your friend is like taking a shower, your friend forgot their phone in a different room. Like there are so many reasons, they're in the middle of a meeting, like there's so many reasons why someone might not have responded to you immediately. But that's not the way that our brains are trained to think. Our brains are trained to seek out patterns and believe them as truths. And so when you also start to like question everything that your brain tells you, it gets way, way easier to move through life, because you're like, okay, brain, I know that you're telling me that that person's mad at me and that's why they haven't texted me back, but also they're probably just taking a shower. Also, it's the middle of the workday. Also, like, right, like we can start to combat the stories that our brains are telling us and find actual truth instead.
Yeah, I know when I was doing my coaching training, when I first kind of came across all of this like information and stuff, when I learned that like what's inside like my perception isn't reality, I was just like, what? All of a sudden I was like, okay, so everything that I've perceived to be real throughout my life so far potentially isn't. And like, one, that was terrifying. Two, made me just like question absolutely everything. But three, it created so much space within me to be like, okay, right, well, blank canvas. What
Right.
more like can I create instead now then, if that's true?
Right. And the thing is that like oftentimes we think of the voice inside our head as our personality, but
Mm.
that's not our personality. It's especially like, I know that most of the world thinks this way in like a self-talk reel of kind of like an inner narration of how they're moving through life, of like, okay, I need to remember to do this and I need to go do that. My brain doesn't work that way, which I've considered honestly kind of a benefit. And it's probably part of the reason why I don't have as many anxieties as other people, because I think in visuals and I think in emotions. So if I'm remembering a memory, I'm imagining the visual of that memory. And when we're thinking in self talk reels, that's actually our subconscious talking to us, right? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I'm such an idiot. Everyone's going to judge me. It's like the idea of going up and introducing myself to that person is too terrifying. Like, I don't think they're going to want to talk to me. Who do I think that I am? Right. Like this inner negative self talk reel is more prominent in people who have a self talk reel, but it also is not actually our personality. Our anxieties are not a part of our personality. They're not just like an inherent part of us that can't go away. They are based off of our conditioning. And some people will be more predisposed to anxieties than others. That's just like how the world works. But it's not who we are. Our anxieties are separate from like ourselves as a whole. And viewing it that way, I mean, don't get me wrong, I fully understand anxieties are not something that you're just like, okay, I understand this now, and now it's gone. But viewing it as like, okay, my anxiety is something that's like just here to kind of keep me safe. It's here to really protect me. And viewing it as a separate entity allows you to separate yourself from it a little bit and allows you to start to disbelieve your anxieties a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, again, they're still very, very important and prominent and can affect lives very strongly. And I want to make sure that like I don't undermine how much they might be able to affect a human's life, but also just like find some solace in the fact that that's not actually you. Like that's not your personality. That's not your inner being. That is just a part of how your brain works.
Yeah. And again, for me, when I first came across all of this, like that was a big game changer for me, because I spent so many years describing myself as being anxious. Like I'm an anxious person. And the second that I started, creating that space between the two and recognizing that, okay, anxiety is something I experience, it's something that I feel, it's not who I am. I was just like,
Yes.
okay, it's just a feeling. And then you can learn how to manage that and how to work with it or let it go. And again, to me, I feel like that's a skill, managing anxiety
Right.
is another skill, just as growing our confidence is, or learning how to go up to someone randomly and speak to them. It's all skills
Definitely.
based. Yeah.
And the other thing is, I like to remind people like, okay, we might say I'm an anxious person instead of saying I'm a person with anxiety. But we would always say I'm a person with a broken arm, not I'm a broken person,
Mhm.
right? Like that's never something that would, or like, oh, I'm someone who has a fever, not I'm a feverish human. Like that's just not the way that we describe ourselves in really any other area outside of mental health.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm a person who happens to have anxiety, not an anxious person. And even just shifting that language internally speaks to your subconscious mind. Like the way that you talk and the way that you move through the world informs how your subconscious mind also operates and how it moves through the world. And the more good information that you can feed it, the more accurate patterns, quote unquote, it can create.
So I have a burning question inside me that I just really want to ask you. And this is
Yeah.
just going back a little bit to something that we touched on just a bit earlier. So in terms of like failing greatly, do you have a story where you failed greatly that you could share with our
Oh,
audience?
sure.
Yeah. I love these
So,
stories.
yeah. So for me, when it was the end of 2019 and I was sitting down and I was planning out 2020 in my business, and I was like, okay, guys, and I was like so excited, and I was posting about it on Instagram stories, and I made on the back of my like closet door in my bedroom this like, okay, here's the schedule of how the year's going to look, and here are all the tasks I need to get done. Each one's on a different post-it note. And this is what my like 2020 is going to look like. And included in it, I do primarily group business coaching because again, I'm community focused. I'm a people focused human being. So group coaching works great for me. And I was like, I'm going to do 6 different types of group coaching through the year. And I had decided I was going to start a conference. And it was one of these things that I was not responding to anything. I had no one being like, okay, Katrina, we don't have a conference here in the Twin Cities. I'd love to have one, blah, 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 blah. Right. I was just like, oh, this would be really cool. I should do this. And also, this is like October, November. And I'm like, I'll do one in like April. Guys, that's not enough time to create a conference. Like, let me just tell you, if you're ever considering creating a conference, give yourself more than like 5 months.
Good tip.
And yes. And I was like sitting there planning this out. And I distinctly remember having like a mentor come and look at it. And she was like, girl, you need to slow down. And I was like, but like, look at this. And I have planned out exactly how much income I make and I'll sell all these things. And she's like, that's not going to work. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So I keep plowing ahead. I'm like talking to some people about like, okay, you did a conference. Let me pick your brain. And they're like, that's not going to work. And I'm like, okay, thank you. But you did a conference. Let me pick your brain. And they're like, it's not going to work. And I was like, great. And then like, I talked to my original business coach who I'd worked with back when I was first just like crystallizing the idea of my business and how to put it together. And she kind of gave me this look. And I remember being like, huh, okay. and she was just like, I mean, conferences are really expensive, Katrina. And this is not a lot of time to put it together. And so I finally was like, okay, well, like maybe I'll like hold off. I'll do it in the fall instead of in the like spring. I'll like wait on it. And then COVID hit and everything shut down. And it was one of those instances where I was like, I was leaning hard on initiation and pushing energy as opposed to ease and flow energy, as opposed to knowing how I operate best and knowing the ways to bring ease into my life. I was really leaning on this, like, I'm going to really hustle hard and I'm going to make this happen, blah, 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 blah. And I am grateful that I didn't pour money into it yet, because I would have lost all of that money. Like I was still planning to kind of make something happen when COVID hit. And it's easy to look at something like COVID and be like, well, that's not really a failure because that happened for everyone across the globe, right? Like it's shut down businesses, it's shut down events, like all of this kind of stuff. And the thing is that like in this one instance, I could view it as, okay, this is like the universe stepping in and being like, Katrina, no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that you're doing? And the thing is that like, there are times when we want to fail and just take the exact same idea and evolve it and move forward, and then fail, evolve, move forward, fail, evolve, move forward. And it's basically like moving in a straight line. It's the same idea. You're just slowly adjusting it to become more of what you want and more aligned with you and more aligned with like who you're working with or what like realm this idea is in. But then there's having an idea that really isn't aligned with you and failing and saying like, no, I'm going to let this one go. And both of those types of failing are valid, but also this is the part where the skill comes in. I have no shame about trying to force a conference and it never happening. I have no shame about being told by multiple people, Katrina, what the hell are you doing? Like, I have no shame about that because it means that I'm learning. It means that I'm trying new things. It means that I'm like thinking bigger than myself. It means that I'm expanding who I am and what I feel capable of. And even if in that moment it didn't happen, I have so much more information that if I ever want to do a conference in 5 years, I can like return to all of the interviews that I did, all of the notes that I took, all of the ideas I came up with. If I'm ever partnering with somebody else on a conference, I have all of this information. If I'm ever mentoring someone who's doing a conference, I can guide them through some of these ideas or some of these notes that I've gotten from other people, right? Like, I'm a firm believer that even if I meet someone at like I'll give another example. I met someone at a virtual conference. I met many people at a virtual conference and I like 20 people had lined up coffee chats with because I was just like, hey, like who knows how any or all of these people are going to affect my business. Like maybe we can collaborate, maybe they'll become clients, maybe they'll just be resources for me later on. And I would say half of those were incredibly awkward calls, right? All Zoom calls, all online where I'm like, hi. And they're like, hi. And I'm like, so I just wanted to like get to know you and see like what you do. And they're like, cool, I do this. Okay. So like the thing is like, again, just because I'm an extrovert doesn't mean I don't have awkward conversations with other people. But that meant that 50% of those calls that I had were great calls, contacts that I've still kept up with, people who I still follow on social media or have had follow-up calls with later on. And I never know how something is going to pan out for me or how something might circle back and be useful in the future. I've had people who I met, did like one free call with, and then hired me 4 years later. Like, you never know how something's going to pan out. And so that's the other thing is like viewing it as a skill when something doesn't work out and being okay with that, knowing that maybe it'll work out in the future, knowing that just because it didn't work out right now doesn't mean it will never work out. That's where you get that by failing over and over and over again and de-escalating what happens when you fail.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, that really kind of resonates with me because I know for me personally, the biggest challenge that I used to have was even just starting something. Like just to share an idea in case other people said, well, that's not going to work. That's never going to happen. So I wouldn't even take the step to even start doing something just in case that bit happened, regardless of whether it actually was going to happen. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that and actually just reframing that whole experience as something that it's just about gathering information and it's, you know, just a learning process in itself. And you have absolutely no idea what that might turn into potentially like years later or somewhere further down the line, or what skill you might take from that could really benefit you in other areas. So great story. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too is that like, even if I look at my business, I started out as a life coach. And then I switched to a life coach for entrepreneurs. And then I started an entrepreneur book club. And all through all of that coaching, I was only doing one-on-one. And then I started my group coaching. And then I decided to only do group coaching. And the way that I just told that sounds nice and pretty, right? Like, it's like, oh, I evolved. I tried all these things. I think they took them all and made them work, right? Like, I would have never done group coaching if I hadn't tried the book club and realized how much I enjoyed the group format and all this stuff. But it's also like, if we reframe it in the way that someone's mind might look at it, it's like, okay, I failed at being a life coach. And then I failed at being a life coach for entrepreneurs. And then my entrepreneur book club failed. And then one-on-one coach, all right. Like, we can totally transform that and look at the exact same succession of events from two completely different viewpoints. And in one, it sounds nice and pretty, and all of these things informed each other. And that's how I got to where I am. And that's genuinely how I view it. Like, I'm grateful for everything I did, even if like they all quote unquote failed. But it could also be looked at like, oh my gosh, look at all the things Katrina's tried. Like, man, she just can't land on one topic. Like, when is she ever, you know what I mean? Like, these are the things that like we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, no, actually, like, this is just me figuring it out. And I learned by doing more than I learned through like book reading, or not that I don't learn through book reading, because I do, but it sinks in for me more when I'm like actually going out and doing this thing than it does if I'm like trying to perfectly plan and control it all along the way, because then you don't have the opportunity for happy accidents. Like, doing an entrepreneur book club allowed me to know how much I would enjoy doing group coaching. And that's literally all I do now.
Yeah, again, I love that. And it again rings really true for part of like my experience and the things that I felt so like insecure about previously. And that was, doing lots of little things and then having this feeling of like, oh my God, everyone's going to think that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing and I'm failing at everything and I can't stick to things. And again, I hear this a lot with my clients as well, of like, I always quit, that I start something and I can't stick with it. And there is a beautiful reframing that you've just shared with that. That's like, maybe it's not quitting, maybe it's not sticking with it. In fact, it's you trying things to seeing what actually feels good for you, and how that can piece together later on in life or wherever it might take you. It's not always what we think it is.
And like, again, if we think about young children, right, they kind of bounce off of, like, when they're figuring out their boundaries, when they're figuring out what area to move in, they kind of like bounce off the walls. It's like, okay, I go over here. Oh, here's where a boundary is. I can't do that. Okay, I'm going to try this thing over here. Oh, that's where a boundary is. And it's how they learn. It's how they evolve. They push their parents and they push their like authority figures to say like, okay, how far can I go? Oh, this is where the line is. Great. Now I know. And then they swap and they start going in the opposite direction. Okay, this is where the line is. Great. Now I know. And as adults, we, for some reason, think that we need to know everything before we start doing it. And that's just not how humans operate. Like, that's just genuinely not how we learn. Yeah. So remembering too, like, that's only an expectation that we're setting for ourselves. And honestly, if someone is the type of person who's going to judge you because you've started something and stopped and evolved and switched gears, that's on them. That's not on you. Like, that's their own insecurities coming out. And when we again try to separate ourselves and our actions from the insecurities and again the thought patterns, right? Our brains as a computer, 1 + 1 = 2, like, that's just how their brains are operating, and they're not in control over that either. It's not their personality either. And like, allowing ourselves really to let that kind of stuff go and say like, you know what, like, that's good for you, not for me, basically. Yeah.
Speaking so much truth. Okay, so just to wrap it up quickly, if there was a message that you could send back to your younger self, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would just say, like, for me personally, it would be stop trying to control so much. Like, again, I'm not immune to all this stuff. I have been doing the exact same stuff that everybody else does. I just technically have a job that allows me to do a lot of training education on how the brain works. So, but past Katrina, I would be like, hey, like, let it be easy, let it flow. You don't have to hustle. You don't have to try to control the environment, because you're actually getting in your own way more than opening the doors to things like joy, to things like confidence, to things like success. And once I kind of was like, screw it, I'm going to release those expectations, it got so much more fun and so much easier. All the things that we want in life. So
yeah. Oh, that was amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you've just shared in our chat today. I think it's going to be really helpful for our listeners. And yeah, thank you for coming on. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you, Katrina.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And if anybody does like have any questions or wants to pick my brain or anything, I'm always open in my Instagram DMs. So feel free to just be like, okay, Katrina, you were talking about this, but how do I actually apply that? Or you brought up this concept, I didn't quite understand it. Can you explain more? Like, I'm totally open. My Instagram handle is just Katrina.Widener. It's super, super straightforward. So feel free. It will not be awkward. I promise you to reach out afterward.
And do you have a website as well where people could maybe find a bit more information on you?
Yeah, definitely. That would be just KatrinaWidener.com. Super straightforward.
Lovely. And we'll pop those in the show notes as well so that people can get hold of you. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Katrina. And
thank you too.
Thank you for coming on. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to reach out to Katrina, you can find her links in the show notes below. Ready to get curious for some of your own self-exploration or take that next step towards achieving a goal of your own? Then check out our free webinars over on the QC website. We've got Cultivating Curiosity, Compassion and Courage for Growth, Why You're the Right Person to Bring Your Idea to Life, Overcoming the Fear of Not Being Good Enough in Your Career, and From Socially Anxious to Quietly Confident. All gifted for you for free and all available on demand for you to watch in your own time at your own pace. Visit quietconnections.co.uk/free gifts to claim those now. Be sure to tune in again next week, and in the meantime, stay connected.